Well, hello again. My name is Laura. Welcome back. So today we're going to start working on our narrative therapy tree of life. But before we do so, let's practice a grounding technique that you already seen the video. But each time we actually approach doing a section of our tree or a section of our narrative, I want us to practice doing a grounding technique. So something really simple that we'll try is actually just some deep breathing. So it's just to kind of clear your mind, clear your head, bring down if you've had any stresses or if you've had any bumps already in the day. It's just a way of bringing yourself back down, connecting again with yourself, with your inner world, so that you can then focus on doing some inner work. So we just take at least 5 deep breaths in and out. And feel free to put your hand on your chest or on your diaphragm just to help as a reminder to bring that oxygen there and then let it go. And also something I do before I begin kind of doing anything, I really love candles. I love the smell, I love the light, and it's just a way that I ground myself by just the smell, the scent, the light, just to kind of bring myself kind of back to this moment. So I want to explain a little bit. So this project, the Narrative Therapy Tree of Life, it actually comes out of New Zealand and Australia, and it's from the Dulwich Center Foundation. And so the originators of this, make sure I say their names right, is the Tree of Life project is by Nkubi and Denenborough. And actually this handout that you're gonna have to use to do this work is done by Danielle Bremer. So thank you so much, Danielle, for creating this handout. And it's just a way to follow some questions in creating your own narrative therapy tree of life. And so in doing this, what I love about this project is it's really positive focused, it's resource based, it's strength based, which I think is really important, especially for the Métis women of our nation, because we have so much strength to offer, and sometimes it gets buried in the stress and buried in right now, especially what's happening in our world with COVID-19, isolation, things like that. It kind of covers up the resources that we already have. So what we're trying to do is actually, through this time, uncover, rediscover, re-emphasize the strengths we already have. So again, this is not it's not counseling, it's not therapy, it's self-help, and it's group-based. So we're gonna kind of collectively work together, first on an individual level, and then collectively come together and talk about the resources we have. So to begin, how this works is we begin with the roots. And if you can kind of imagine the roots a little bit like a timeline, and you can feel free to do it however you want, but how I suggest is you begin with kind of in a little bit of a chronological order. And so basically we're going to talk about where you come from and your roots, your family, your history a bit. And so some of the questions here you can follow on this sheet that you have been given. And it says like, what roots do you have in your life? How important are these? And that's kind of how you begin. You begin to just kind of think about the roots. And do you know what's so neat about trees and about plants? And you might already know this, but they're actually quite extensive. And the further and deeper the roots go, they actually sometimes are interconnected together with the tree. And the tree may actually be quite far away, but they're touching and they're interconnected, and they actually draw strength from one another. They can also pull and take strength from another tree if one is overpowering or overbearing. And so sometimes we have to be careful with roots and untangle them to be healthy. And we've had to do that in our lives too. And that's where sometimes the triggers come in. So remember, if you're triggered, take a step back, do some deep breathing, do some self-soothing, do some grounding, and then refocus on your roots again. So once you kind of think about your roots and how important they are and where you come from, then you kind of go, okay, so like, where were we born? Where did we go to school? What are some like major accomplishments, like becoming an auntie, becoming a mom? So like thinking about some of these roots, and like maybe it's like when you graduated high school, if that was a milestone for you. Even in our family, like that was a big milestone for some of us. So just writing down some of these events and just kind of looking through your roots and looking through the times, even times of like losing someone, of a death of someone. Those are really significant. Part of it and putting it in your roots is just, it's kind of created who you are today. And so when you go through this timeline, you're kind of just looking at the strength, the things you've gained, the things you've done. So it's more past focused. And in this, you kind of ask, how has this influenced who you are today? So taking a look at the roots, the things that have grounded you, that have brought you to where you are. And so it's a bit of a look back and seeing not just the hard, but the good, the things that have brought you to where you are now. And so once you kind of go through that, and I want you to really honor these roots, because like I said, they actually go very deep, and they actually have quite an influence of who we are. They don't define who we are, but they do have an influence. So then the next step, so once we do that, what I want us to move towards is the branches. And so the branches are more about your hopes and your goals. So looking at, even in doing this kind of art project, what do you hope to gain? What do you want to rediscover? And there's some questions here. Like it says, if you could have 3 wishes, what could they be? Do you hope for health, happiness? And so it could be different for every person, but just try to think about what is it that you want to gain. And then, do you aspire to continue education or switch things up? Sometimes, especially with COVID right now and isolation, it's kind of caused a bit of a reshift or redirection for families. So even for us, some of our hopes have really changed during COVID, and we've actually made some decisions as a family of like, how do we want to do things different? How do we want to be better connected with our family, with our friends? And so we've kind of shifted some of our goals, just to be a bit more positive and be a bit more helpful. And so also, like, how achievable do you think some of these aspirations are? Like, if it's too big, how do you narrow it down? What's the first step to getting there? So it's just basically shifting some of your goals so that it's called slicing it thinner. So it's making it a little bit more achievable by making it a smaller goal, or baby steps. How do we get to the big goal, but how do we take those small steps to get there? What could happen if you're able to achieve these? So some of the positive outcomes that could happen, like let's say if you do decide to go back to school, what are some of the ways that that's going to change and impact you? So, or even impact your family or others around you. And then also even looking at like, what are some other hopes you have for other people in your life? So like hoping for health for other people, hoping for, education for other people in your life. And you can include those, especially if they're really close to you. It's great to like hope and dream for them as well. And you can even eventually end up encouraging them too. So basically, like once we get the ground, once we get the roots, once we get some idea of like where do we each come from, even like a big part of mine was discovering my Métis roots, uncovering them, looking through the transcripts, and actually like learning history of Canada. Like although it actually brought me to quite a neat place of discovering how I was but my history, my roots had a big part in like the development of Canada. So it's neat to be able to kind of look, and I love going to Métis events and hearing people like, oh, my relative is your relative. So part of it is just a neat connection and a neat way to look at some of those pieces of history. And then in doing that, moving right up to the hopes, to the goals, to the bigger picture of you know, at this point in my life, where am I at? What are some of my hopes? Because they often change at different seasons of life. And I've had to learn that in this stage of life, I need to set my goals smaller because I have young kids at home. So I need to actually like remember that this is a season of phase that a lot of my energy is going to them. And so my hopes, my goals, my dreams, they need to be a little different in this season. I do have some bigger hopes, like PhD one day. That's one of my big dreams. But at this season, that's not possible. But I can do little things to get there. I can do small things. I can even like save money for that piece. And so I've had created goals around that kind of make space for those big dreams. So what are yours? I'm so excited to hear and for you to think about some of those and to draw them in and create them. And remember, it's not about your best artistry or anything. It's just about getting it down. Because there's something about, it's called anchoring change, and about writing it down, about telling someone. And so even after you do these roots and these branches, I really encourage you to tell one person that is safe, that you trust, about something you learned about your roots and something you learned about your hopes and dreams. Because when you actually tell someone, it makes it a bit more real and it locks it in your brain a bit. And you can even ask that person like, hey, could you hold me accountable to one of these hopes or one of these dreams? Ask me about it in a month. Because it helps us actually move towards that step. And so think about one person that you could tell about this journey of looking at your roots and then looking at some of your hopes and dreams. I hope that's helpful. So that's the beginning piece. The next session we'll be looking at the ground and at the trunk. So what is the everyday and then what is more inside? And so that'll be the next step. I really encourage you to just slowly work on this. Sometimes people will sit down and do the whole thing, but it can be a bit overwhelming. So I want to encourage you to just begin with these two. In the next session, I'll be talking about these two. In the last session, I'll be talking about the last two. So it gives more time to process and think and dream and get it down. So we will be doing this step by step, and I hope you enjoy the journey. Thanks.